Welcome in to the Inside Carolina Postgame. I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Rob Harrington. We are sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt as always, johnnytshirt.com. Go see him on Franklin Street and do me a favor. I'll mention it at the end, but go to InsideCarolina.com and sign up for your premium membership if you're not already a premium member. And like, review, rate, all the good stuff on these shows. And let's hit the like button on this YouTube video and get as many as possible. Excuse me, Rob. I'm about choking on myself. I'm looking out over a barren wasteland with no snow in sight. So if you're in this chat and you have snow, let us know where you're from, because I haven't seen any here in the big city of Clayton, North Carolina. Rob, Carolina gets the 91-75 win, handles business. I mean, it was one of those games where it was never in doubt, and it was a smooth win. Some good, some bad. But overall, getting the job done in Atlanta is never a bad thing for a Carolina team.
An easy double-digit win on the road in the ACC. Those words feel good to chew on. They sound good to say them. You haven't been able to take that for granted. You and I were talking offline. I think this game was just one more step for these Tar Heels in sort of burying the California stretch and putting that behind them. I think they've recovered really nicely. They had the marquee win at UVA. This in the past, I mean, with national championship Carolina teams, they've stumbled in Atlanta. So it's not something that I ever assume will be easy. But the Heels made it easy, and it's funny because they scored 91 points and they shot terribly from the 3-point line, which they've been doing really well lately. And this was the right time to have a bad shooting game. I think they attempted 31 threes, or down in the 20s in terms of the percentile. But what they did was George Check invited them to run, and Carolina was happy to accept that invitation. They got a lot of good stuff done in transition today.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, just off the top, Carolina, they showed the graphic at the end of the game. Carolina scored 85 plus in 4 or 5 games or whatever it is, 91 today. What is the key here? And we talked about in the last couple of weeks, they're making shots, but to your point earlier, they did not. I mean, if you told me Derek Dixon and Kyan Evans were going to combine for 2 for 13 from the field and 2 for 11 from 3, I'd have thought Carolina struggled. But they still managed to score 91 points. What's been the key there for this Carolina offense, who early in the season had some moments where it was just it was tough to watch?
They are definitely shooting better overall in conference play. Even in some of the losses, they shot well. You just sort of forget about that because of the team's defense, but that's been on the uptick. Today, I thought the ball movement was excellent. There were some really beautiful possessions. There was one in the first half, I believe, where everyone got a touch on the perimeter, and it ends up over with Caleb Wilson for a 3. And it was just, everyone had a shot, but they kept passing it for a better shot. I think Dean Smith would have wholeheartedly approved of that possession, although maybe he wouldn't want a 6'9" guy taking a 3. But I think that possession looked really good. When I looked at the stats, I think it was at least 7 Carolina players had 2 or more assists. I mean, I wonder how often that has happened. That's a lot of different guys getting at least 2 assists. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 7 or 8. It's very impressive ball movement. And I really liked the way that the team was looking for each other, and that's how you overcome a spotty shooting night. And again, George Tech was playing fast. I like that they play fast. I hope Damon Stoudemire does really well there, so that you have a fast team in the conference like this, because they push you. Some of the other national type teams also run, so it's a good style test. And I thought Carolina handled it really well.
Yeah, if you're looking at the stat sheet, if you haven't checked out the official board, to Rob's point, everybody but Zayden High, who only played a minute, and Powell had an assist. Vasar had 1. Everybody else had at least 2, with Caleb Wilson with 5 and only 1 turnover. Is that stat right? Carolina had 2 turnovers on the game. I was like, am I looking at the first half or what? Rob, to that point, we've seen Carolina be sloppy at times. They've been pretty good with the basketball, but 2 turnovers in an ACC game on the road. I don't really care who you play in. That's nice work from Carolina.
That's excellent too, and you're right. And the even more so for me, because they were having some longer possessions, even with all the transition baskets. Some of the half court possessions, they did have a lot of passing, and even a little bit of risk on some of those passes, some of the lobs and things, and they were making it work. And that's a hallmark of a Hubert Davis team. I know they've been up and down some recently, but overall for 5 years, that is one area you can point to that the Hubert teams have been strong, is taking care of the ball. And I always wondered if that was an artifact of or a byproduct of RJ Davis being such a sure-handed ball handler. But with him gone and they're still doing stuff like this with the rotation of guards as we've seen, I think that's a testament to the way they teach taking care of the ball.
Talking with Rob Harrington on the Inside Carolina Postgame. Shout out to 565 people that are in the chat. Hit the like button on the YouTube. I requested when we had 11 or 1,200 in the live chat the other day, I wanted to get to 1,000 likes. We got 993. So if you haven't liked that video from, I think, the Virginia win, go back and like it so we can get over 1,000 likes on that one. And do your job today and like this YouTube video here with Rob Harrington. When I'm looking at the stats, if plus minus are things that people like, Henri Veesaar was plus 29 today, and obviously had a big game in the stat column with 20 and 12. Rob, Greg Barnes and I discussed maybe he was getting worn out, maybe he was a little tired. Granted, Georgia Tech does not have the height size, but they tried to push Henry around a little bit. But 20 and 12 and plus 29. It just shows the importance of having this guy on the court. We can talk Caleb Wilson, and we will. But Henri Veesaar on the court is key for this Carolina team, and it shows up in the numbers almost every night.
One area, too, I think has improved recently since California is that Veesaar is getting more comfortable in drop coverage. So a lot of the offense that Georgia Tech had going was a guard. Carolina wasn't switching, and then Veesaar would just sort of drop, and so they were baiting the Georgia Tech guards into penetrating into the paint, and the Tech guards weren't very comfortable there. You saw them take a lot of 8 and 12 footers, and they made some, but by and large, that's where Carolina wants to live. And early in the season, they were coaxing their opponents to take those types of shots. It wasn't until Michigan State really that someone sort of cracked it. But I was happy to see that maybe they found something defensively. They've rediscovered their rim protection, which looked like they had lost that, SMU and when they went out to California. So that coming back around, they gave up some easy ones. They had some transition baskets because they were running. But on balance, I thought the half-court defense looked better too.
Yeah, when you look at it, Veesaar's total line, 20 points, 12 rebounds, 4 of those offensive. 1 assist, 4 fouls, 4 block shots, 2 steals in 30 minutes. Like I said, plus 29. Just an all-around good game. Another guy that had a good game that I think maybe is rounding into form. Maybe it's recency bias for me. Luka Bogavac, 6 for 10, 3 of 7 from the field, 3 of 7 from 3, 3 assists, and no turnovers. Of course, when you only have 2 as a team, there's going to be a lot of zeros up there, but he can play. He's a good basketball player. He's struggled so far this year, but there are a few games, and in this one particularly, that's the Luka Bogavac they hoped they were getting when they did all the work to get him from overseas, Rob.
Yes, and he's playing with much more confidence. What I like about him for this team is that he gives them some off-the-dribble shooting. Kai Evans has struggled very much in that regard, and that's not really Derek Dixon's game either. He can do it a little bit. Bogavac, as you saw today, he likes, maybe even a little too much, but he likes those step-back threes and the hopping to the left three. And you don't necessarily want him to take a ton of those, but there are possessions where you need shots like that. We're about to find out, a week from today, they probably will need some of those types of shots to go down because they won't be able to boss Duke's front court as easily. So they'll need the guards to hit some shots. I'm actually okay at this point. I'm more or less agnostic whether it's Bogavac or Stevenson in the game. I like the way that Hubert is using the 2 of them because they give you very different skills and different looks. Stevenson also doing the job as the backup post, having a really good run as a 4-5. Yeah, until today, at least he had been hitting more threes. I don't know if he hit one today, but overall, I think he's been more physical lately. And then with Bogavac, if he's starting to score more effectively and just getting comfortable with American basketball, and maybe he would say American officiating, he had some beefs with the refs early this season. I haven't noticed as much of that recently either. Maybe it speaks to his overall comfort level because they certainly need him. I think at this point, I've sort of resigned to Kai Evans being a situational guard. And so the big minutes guys need to be Dixon, Trimble, and Bogavac.
Yeah, you talking about Bogavac, you talk about the officiating. I have to give ACC officials props, right? I have banged on them a ton, but when they reviewed Caleb Wilson's, you stick your face in my circle and you're going to own it, and they said it was incidental contact. That was like music to my ears from ACC officials. I was shocked, and because and Rob, that's another thing. And this is an aside away from this game, but anybody that's ever played basketball is taught to rip through and do all those type things. And for the ACC to, in my opinion, now the Georgia Tech player disagrees, I'm sure, but getting it right on that call, is that movement towards a more perfect ACC officiating crowd? Because that has been a flagrant so many times, and it was music to not hear them say flagrant one after that. Just overall, your thoughts on that? It's purely a basketball play, and they let it go. I was surprised.
I was very surprised. I haven't seen enough of it to have any opinion whether it's a trend. I would like for it to become a trend because I do think there is a key distinction between that type of play where the ball is moving through and the elbows are under the ball. If you're above the ball, okay, or the launching elbow, like that's what I think they're trying to get rid of, rightfully so. But when a player has the ball and the defender is trying to bother him, you've got to allow some contact. It's sort of like in football, if the defensive player is going to get handsy with the wide receiver, you've got to let the wide receiver get handsy with the defensive player to balance that out. Otherwise, it becomes too one-sided. I think the culmination of this situation was Baylor in 2022, where, as we all know, Baylor was allowed to come back in that game, and they played really hard and all that, but they were enabled to come back in part because of loose officiating, allowing them to become very one-sided. And so I look at that type of elbow call as achieving balance, not only from an elbow perspective, but just in general, making sure the contact is even both ways. And the ACC crews, I think, have been much worse over the years than the other big conferences. And I generally don't complain about them that much, but I do think they've been improved this year.
Yeah, and then Roy Williams always said, "Good teams beat bad refs." But yeah, you bring up that Baylor game. That's still a nightmare scenario, almost, for North Carolina. Dontrez Styles 3-pointer in overtime saves the day. That'll go down as a Trivial Pursuit answer for Carolina basketball, especially if they could have gotten it done against Kansas. Talking with Rob Harrington here, 91-75 Carolina over Georgia Tech. Have not talked about Caleb Wilson. Other than that, Rob, the most impressive thing for me today from Caleb Wilson was not trying to do everything. And when they were doubling and tripling him, he had a plan before they ever got there. And it shows, where he has 6 assists, only 6 rebounds and 5 assists. That's all you can ask for. I mean, he's going to put up the 22 points night in and night out, and they're going to be flashy, and it's going to be incredible, and the one-handed alley-oop's just ridiculous. But that showed growth right there. He's got it in him because he passes really well, but Georgia Tech was hell-bent on not allowing him to do whatever he wanted, and he found his guys. Makes a difference.
I absolutely agree, and I had the same thought. I love the fact that he didn't score for whatever it was, 7 minutes or however many minutes. He really didn't shoot much at all. I thought coming home, especially, all the more reason to sort of show out. But Wilson didn't play that way, and as you noted, he was ready for those doubles and triples. He knew where the ball should go. And we talked about this months ago, that he would have to learn to feel that pressure and learn to adapt during the course of this year. And he is. The one thing he did that I thought was really clever was he would take one dribble away from the double team to buy himself some space to make up. And because he's a big guy, he can throw that pass over the top. So he was finding shooters. He was finding weak side guys. I thought his passing in the first half set the tone because it punished Georgia Tech so much for those doubles and triples that I thought that their defense on him actually got a bit softer after that.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you cognizant of, look, if he's going to get rid of it, we can't just crash on him. And he played well. Somebody in the chat said first 28 points scored without Wilson scratching, and he had the assist, he had the 5 assists, but he also gets a lot of hockey assists because of what you talked about out of the gate on this show. Is Carolina passing up a good shot for a better shot, and and then he does what he does on the highlight reel. Just a nasty, nasty player for Carolina. And I've told people, you better get a chance to go see him. If you get a chance to go see him play live, go do it because he's different. And it's a generational type talent for sure. Rob, looking at the rest of the score, the rest of the stat sheet, Stevenson with 7 and 6, another good game from him. I already mentioned Evans and Dixon struggling from the field. Seth Trimble's game. Seth's got to figure out a move other than the crossover Euro step on the break. But other than that, I mean, you'll take 18 from him all the time. And he didn't 8 for 14. That's probably a lot of shots for Trimble, but your thoughts on the vet? Because if Carolina can get this production from the 3 of them, from the big 3 that we've talked about, and my math says that's 60 points, 60 out of the 91 with Bogavac giving you 16 more. I mean, that's how they're scoring this many points, but they're balanced, and I think that's key.
Yes, and this was a great game for Trimble to be assertive offensively because it was more of a track meet. That's more suited to his style as opposed to the teams that are going to pack it in and make you play half court. So it plays to his strengths, and he played. He didn't settle for threes, even though he's been making some recently, including the big ones against UVA. And so I like the way that he played. The other thing on the box score, I would just point out that he and Wilson and Vasar were right at 30 minutes, not at the 35 plus. And when you have a quick turnaround to Monday night with Syracuse, I was glad that Hubert was able to get those numbers down some. I mean, that's a side benefit of beating a team the way that they did. It wasn't a lot of contact late in the game, fouls and timeouts. People aren't playing 37 minutes. You get your 30, you move on to Monday night. And what I think will be a more challenging game, even though they're at home, I was happy to see that they came in at 30 and not above that. I don't know, when you mentioned it early, sort of by reference, whether Vasar has been getting ground down because of all the heavy minutes, because he's never done that before. He didn't do it at Arizona. I didn't, the ill effects were not apparent today, but in general, I like it when these guys are able to be under 33, 34, because I think it helps their defense too, because it's not possible for them to go max effort on both ends, pushing 40. I mean, they have to cut some corners somewhere. So I'm happy for them to bring those minutes down, get Jaron Stevenson more and more comfortable as the backup, so his minutes come up to take some pressure off the 2 big guys, and then Trimble with Bogavac playing better, hopefully Dixon playing a bigger role. They can have more of an even distribution than what it looked like it might be. And we mentioned 2022 already, the Iron 5 from that year.
Yeah, to your point, 30 for the big 3, Trimble, Wilson, Vasar, Bogavac with 26, Dixon with 24, and Stevenson with 22. So, yeah, good mix there, especially to your point. And this Saturday, Monday deal is perfect for the NCAA tournament setup. It gets you used to that a little bit. And, it's easier when you're away first and then you come home to that game. Because Carolina will get home at some point. Snowing in Chapel Hill, I think, but I have faith that they will have a fairly easy flight in and ride home, much easier than us normal folks would have. But they've got Syracuse on Monday night. Any final thoughts here? Some of the stats. 2 turnovers, I've already mentioned it. Points off turnovers, Carolina 18-0. Total rebounds, only 1 in favor of Carolina, 39-38. And they did let the big man for Georgia Tech go for 27. Free throw shooting. This is how you find out if a team's focused, Rob. Tell me if I'm right or wrong on my point here. They missed 1 foul shot. It's easy to say you're focused. It's easy to talk about focused and we weren't and blah, blah, this and that. When you go almost perfect from the line, 11 for 12, tells me the team's locked in.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are coaches who would agree with you. I think there are some who would disagree and say, "Hey, my guys just can't shoot them." Doesn't mean that we're not getting them to focus. That would have been me as a player, by the way. I was very focused and also very terrible at the foul line. So I would, in my defense, I can't agree with you completely, but I do think there is something to be said for that. The rebounding thing, I'm surprised that has become a problem all of a sudden. And I know Hubert has spoken to it, and it's something they might get away with it against Syracuse, but they absolutely have to keep Duke off the offensive glass. We'll talk more about that next week, but that to have the type of season they want, they still have plenty of growth to make. I'm encouraged by the progress because to me, after California, it looked like they could end up with sort of a tanking 9-9 type of ACC slate. Now 5-3, Syracuse at home gives them a real good shot to go 6-3. And then let's go into that showdown. And I think they should beat Duke at home. I know they won't be favored, but I think they should win that game.
Interesting take. Rob Harrington dropping it's not a hot take because you're very well versed and researched and certainly not just saying, oh, well, they're terrible, they should blow them out or blah, blah, blah. When Rob Harrington speaks, folks tend to listen. Last question's a fun question. I kind of enjoyed listening to Wes Durham and Dennis Scott. When I saw it was them, Wes is obviously going to be a professional, and Dennis Scott has really ramped up his game commentating. I knew they were going to reference the 3 hit to beat them. I guess that was in '89, which is ridiculous how long ago that was. But the games are much more enjoyable for me when the announcers actually are bringing something other than who you know, what you know, and all that kind of stuff. What do you think there, Rob? Just to give a shout out, because when it's good, you gotta recognize it if we're going to bang on it when it's not.
It's true, and I confess that 3 out of 4 games I mute the announcers the entire game. Today, I actually, to your point, I left them on for the most part because I don't mind Dennis Scott. I like the fact that he doesn't appear to have an agenda apart from calling the game. It's like listening to the '80s commentators. They're just calling a game. There's like a lot of radio influence in what they do. They're describing what's happening on the court. That's all I want as a viewer, and to fill in information, things you hear from the sidelines or the officials. That's how they can be really useful. Wes Durham, of course, is a total pro and such a familiar voice to the Carolina fan base. But I like Dennis Scott better than some of the other people. I'll just put it that way. All the chattiness and the anecdotes. I think people took away the wrong lessons from Dick Vitale all those years because that's his shtick. But I guess it worked for him for a while. I think it stopped working for him too. But I like the approach where you just watch the game and you don't impose an agenda. You don't get into these broader talking points. Just keep it right in front of you for 2 hours, and everyone will be grateful that you did.
Yeah, and I mean, and like I said, I'm hesitant to mute it because I want to hear stuff. Now, look, if ESPN decided to do a Sounds of the Game network where it was just mic'd up the court and you hear the PA and all that, I'd pay triple for it. But it was refreshing to hear Dennis Scott. And look, the dude was deadly as part of Lethal Weapon 3 at Georgia Tech. Those were the days, old heads like us, man, those were the days in the ACC basketball when it was just knockdown, drag out every night. But not today, not in Atlanta. 91-75, Carolina beats the Yellow Jackets pretty easily and pretty calmly on the night. The big 3 go off, and Carolina protects the basketball in a way I haven't seen in a long time. Rob, if you don't have anything left, I'm getting us out of here, man. Hopefully it'll start snowing at some point.
No. I'm 2 feet of snow here. You guys can don't bring that evil on me. don't put snow across my computer.
We're going to have 10 inches of snow. Yeah, there none. It is the dome is working. I tweeted about it. We have a dome over this area. It 100% works every time. It's done it again. Anyway, Rob, cutting up. Shout out 747 people in the chat. You guys are great. Everybody stay safe, stay warm. We'll be back after Syracuse on Monday night, and the coast-to-coast crowd will be back tomorrow evening to talk more about that game. Rob, it's always a pleasure.
Yep. See you on Monday.